Yep. Public Safety Committee, you are now live.
Good afternoon. I'm Chair Brian Haynes, and I'd like to welcome you to the July 28th Public Safety Committee meeting. All council members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through holding these committee meetings a bit differently. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible through the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering the code 9477. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. For today's meeting, we have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 9477. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, callers will hear, for more options, please press. Pressing star will allow callers to continue to listen live and join a speaker queue. Callers should only join the speaker queue during the time at the end of the agenda for public comment. If you're watching the meeting through the live stream while you are listening to the meeting by phone, please be sure to turn down the volume on your device. I will now go through and introduce all the committee members and staff who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you are not speaking. When you would like to speak, unmute your microphone. Please remember to mute your microphone after speaking. Council and staff, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Vice Mayor Gwen Whistler. Gwen.
I thought I had unmuted, sorry. Hello.
Councilwoman Shanika Smith.
Hello.
City Manager Deborah Campbell.
Hello.
City Attorney Brad Branham.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, we will start by the approval of the minutes. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We will roll call vote to approve the motion and second. When I say your name, please say aye to approve the minutes. Vice Mayor Whistler.
Aye.
Councilwoman Smith.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Minutes have been approved. Now we will go to an update on analysis of police response to protest. And I will start this off. On Sunday, June 14th, the mayor and all 6 members of council signed a letter instructing the city attorney to bring back to council the recommendation of a firm to perform an investigation into APD's response to the Black Lives Matter protests that began on Sunday, May 31st. At our July 14th council meeting, City Attorney Brad Branham presented his recommendation for hiring the firm of Hilliard Heinz to perform the investigation. Following the conclusion of public comment on this matter, members of council expressed their concerns with approving this hiring, ranging from the $80,000 price tag to the predictability of the outcome, and asked that this matter be shelved. I was pleased to see council willing to reconsider their course after listening to the lengthy, thoughtful public comment session. It now appears that there is no longer majority support for hiring the recommended firm or any other outside entity to perform this investigation. So the task before this committee today is to come up with a recommendation to council for the next steps forward, along with deciding the role this committee should undertake. It is my desire that whatever decisions are made here today concerning the role of Public Safety Committee are completely transparent and that we welcome public input throughout the process. After listening to the community input we have received, and after consulting with others, I do have some recommendations. I agree with the many community members saying that while APD's response during these protests may have been mostly within the law, that does not mean that these actions were right, and for many of us, they were morally objectionable. We have already seen enough live footage and heard enough eyewitness testimony as to what took place that we should begin the discussion on how we want to see APD deal with crowd control issues in the future. So first, I'm recommending that the Public Safety Committee call on experts to advise us on both on alternative methods of handling crowd control, while also pointing out the proper use and deployment of any methods we choose to retain. That Public Safety Committee then makes policy change recommendations to full council. Secondly, that APD resume their own internal investigation, and APD continue to determine what, if any, after action is required. Third, recognizing that many community members have little confidence that the investigation will result in non-biased findings, I also recommend that the Public Safety Committee take on the role of ensuring that those wanting to share their experiences and firsthand knowledge of perceived wrongdoings during the protest have a safe outlet for doing so. While I'm not recommending that this committee conduct its own investigation, I do think it's a responsibility of both the Public Safety Committee and City Council to push APD to be as transparent with findings of their investigation, but also reveal as much information as legally permitted pertaining to discipline handed out as a result of its investigation. And with that, I will open it up for discussion.
For me, I am supportive of that. I guess my question is maybe to Brad or Deborah. Is there a group that we could find that could, kind of give us 22nd century policing for crowd control that would be easier to, how would we go about finding that group, I guess is my question.
Yes, Vice Mayor Whistler, I can begin to respond to some of that. It wasn't exactly what we were looking for when we were coming up with our original recommendation for an overall evaluation. But I do believe that at least part of what, for instance, the firm we had recommended does is gives you not just an analysis of compliance with current laws, but a little bit of a roadmap to improve your process based on modern and forward-looking processes. So I cannot say, because we didn't explore that in too much depth, how far that would go, but I do think that some of the same firms that do some of these evaluations, investigations, also have as a component to their service some of these sort of forward-looking, what I would call advisory roles. They are experts, at least in certain cases, in crowd control, and may be able to provide the kind of services. But there are other groups out there which are more theoretical, more intellectual or educational in nature, as opposed to sort of these consultants, which may also be of consideration. And I would certainly open up to the city manager as well if she has anything to add to that.
Yes, as you all know, this is really a national discussion. And there are lots of other communities that have hired some experts to bring them in to help them with this same issue. We'd be more than happy to reach out to some of those communities to see how well those firms are doing in terms of managing their conversation. Be more than happy to talk with the chief, and we can do a little outreach to some of the other communities.
And I would also think that there are probably people locally that would be willing to come in and speak that we don't necessarily have to hire or pay to do so.
I agree.
And
totally.
I would personally be looking for those folks as well.
I think we could get kind of a balanced conversation, and I think that we might be able to get maybe research that's even online. It doesn't have to be a person that physically comes in, but we could do our own research as well.
Absolutely.
And so the second phase of this, which I do feel like there needs to be, for lack of a better term, truth and reconciliation, or something around how the public feels about what happened during the protests, and even a little bit beyond the stated timeline that Brad was working with. I'm sensitive to this idea that folks won't feel safe. And so I don't exactly know how to do that publicly, but yet shield them to make them feel safe. So Brian, do you have any more sort of depth behind that, or any way to do that?
I can't say that I actually have an actual plan there. Possibly they could be interviewed by Brad or the legal department and compile their testimony there. I would assume that folks would be more comfortable with that situation and more open to testifying, or that's one thought, but I don't know exactly where best to do this, and was looking for ideas.
Well, so I guess two questions is, do you sense that people want to tell their story and that's kind of what they want, or do you sense that they want action?
A little bit of both. I think that from the discussions I've been in, folks are mainly looking for action, and that we find ways to deal more appropriately with crowd control and protests in the future. But I also think people that had serious complaints and issues with what happened want to tell their story as well. And I don't think that would happen through an internal police investigation. So I'm brainstorming for ideas of how that takes place, but I do think at least some portion of that needs to take place.
I think every step that we make in answering to the public's call is a part of that reconciliation piece. Even the decisions that we discuss and make on today will be a part of that. The reason why we're here right now revisiting this conversation is because we heard from the public to kind of help us build that trust and to move forward to the next big step, which is reimagining police. So I think we've been responsive, and in that responsibility, I do believe that we should try the best we can to listen to each part of their concern, the part about how much this actually cost, and is this time for us to be spending that sort of money on an investigation when we have a list of demands with the divestment and reinvestment plan. If it's safe, if people are going to feel more safe with an internal investigation, which is under the guise of policing themselves. So with that being said, I would like to move forward with the recommendations that Chairman Brian put on the table, and kind of just expand on those just a little bit. And expanding on that, I know that Brad, you were looking into sort of a two-phase inquiry, and you were diligently working on the second phase of this investigation, which you labeled an internal review. And I believe last time you indicated that there was some overlap between this work and what you've termed the external review and the internal review, I have full confidence that you can answer a lot of the questions that the community is seeking, and you can answer some of the questions that this committee will formulate. Could you explain a little bit more to us about that overlap and how confident you feel with your staff capacity to actually fulfill the other part of that phase?
Absolutely, Councilwoman Smith. We were, as you mentioned, performing this overall evaluation in two phases. One was going to be this external review, and that was really the portion where opinions would be drawn. We felt that in order to maintain the independence that the council and this committee wanted, that all of those opinions and final conclusions should be rendered outside. However, as part of what we were doing in our phase one, or the internal phase, I should say, was really an overview to gather information specifically about the decision making, like what actually happened and who made those decisions and what parties were involved in making various decisions throughout the course of the police response to the protests. So obviously we're dealing with some of the same subject matter, and that's where you get the overlap. Where we tried to stop internally was drawing any conclusions. We wanted it to be a production of the facts, and not all of the facts, because we really wanted to leave the public engagement portion to the experts to do that at that point, since they would be conducting such a thorough review. So we weren't dealing in the internal review phase with any sort of public engagement. We were leaving that for the external phase. But internally, we did interview members of council, as you know, as well as members of city staff, in order to create a narrative of the timeline, to show what actually occurred and who made decisions along the way, but stopping short of drawing any sort of final conclusions about the adequacy of any of those decisions.
So in what you're describing, the overlap, it is that fact-finding piece, right?
I think that's exactly right. And certainly, I think a major limitation of the internal review in and of itself is we didn't engage the public on that. And we did that purposely, not to avoid it, but we wanted to allow that to be done by that outside organization, since they would be the ones doing the full-blown analysis and investigation. But we certainly collected enough facts, we feel, internally to give a very good overview of the decision-making process, not so much what happened on the ground with any particular use of force.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to where Gwen was going, you know, a part of the community feeling more confident and us laying a great foundation for moving the conversation forward to the divestment and reinvestment model, more towards community policing. You know, I think this part, the fact finding and giving the community the opportunity to be heard, and not only to hear, but to be considered, and their voices and their concerns be reflective in this final analysis. I think that's what the public really wants. And being that a portion of the fact finding is already done, I believe we then can kind of do some outsourcing to find out who can actually go and collect the stories. And then the composing of those two, I think it'll give the community something satisfying. Now, I open that up to the committee to discuss. Do you all feel like, you know, that is a good recipe for more safety and harm reduction when it comes to mass gatherings?
I'm sorry, I got interrupted and I lost my train of thought there and didn't hear exactly what you were saying there, Shanika. Gwen, would you like to address what?
I think that, I think that whatever Brad has found out so far, that to the extent appropriate, make that public as to, again, kind of outside of what happened on the ground, the decision making that got the on the ground things going, would be, to have people understand that and also weigh in whether they thought things were appropriate or not. I think if we conclude that basically the on the ground work has to really be, that really APD internally will do that analysis and determine what, if any, disciplinary actions might come out of that action. And then, and again, I don't know how the legal department feels about it, but, or, maybe we'd even bring a mediator in or something to allow people to tell their stories and to, put their requests out there. What is it you want us to do relative to your particular story? And maybe a mediator or a group like that, that will make people feel safe, might be a good, and then, rather than kind of give names or anything, maybe they can sort of summarize the stories or et cetera, and then kind of give that back to us in determining future policy changes or revisions or whatever you might call it.
So I would also say there, with the people that I've spoke with recently on this, felt as if we don't have to make every decision today as to how we're going to move forward with this. That though I've reached out to community members, it's been a very limited group that I've met with, and so I would ask that whatever we do be somewhat flexible and fluid, and we continue to seek community input as to the best way to address that portion of it.
But I do feel like there is a kind of like a third leg to this wheel. And I believe it comes into us taking the public footage that we have so many hours of from Facebook Lives, but then also looking into this council being a part of this response and looking at body cam footage. And it's my understanding that, Brad, you were already looking to filing the appropriate court documents to ensure that this third party firm had access to this footage. So I want to know, my statement is, how difficult will it be to alter the petition slightly to reflect the request of council looking at the footage and being able to determine, some of the internal policies that were broken. And let me say this, I've heard this big thing, this response to body cam footage saying, there are thousands of hours worth of body cam footage. I don't want to see thousands of hours worth of body cam footage, but I would like to see the body cam footage of the officers who were certified to deploy less than lethal weapons, and the individuals, specifically the individuals on the bridge, the individuals who were certified and tasked to do this, to deploy less than lethal weapons during the entire protest, and also the body cam footage of the individuals who responded to the destruction of the medic tent. So that's not thousands of hours worth of body cam footage. That is very specific to a certain role that that we are seeking to find justice around.
And Brad, does our request need to be specific to begin with? And if so, I would disagree with what Shamika said there.
In order to allow the body cam footage to be released to anyone, whether that's city council, the public, or some independent body, we do have to obtain a court order to do so. As Councilwoman Smith has stated, We were in the process of putting together a petition. We could absolutely alter that petition to be released to the city council or the public if this body and the city council as a whole directed us to do so. We can't speak for the court. They will get to make the final determination if they think it is warranted, but we could certainly seek that. And we will then have to specify which parts of the total body cam footage we want released. That is a requirement of that petition.
So Gwen, I don't know how you feel here, but
Well, I'm not. I don't. I can be supportive of it. I guess my only concern is, if we kind of are in. I guess my concern is if we release footage of individual officers, but they weren't actually doing something illegal, I'm concerned that we endanger that officer. I mean, frankly, and that's what my concern is. I'm absolutely, if they did something illegal, we need to do something about that. But if it's determined that it was not illegal, maybe we didn't like it, but it wasn't illegal, I'm very concerned about endangering officers. And frankly, we've seen it across the country. We've actually seen it here in Asheville. Once that officer's name becomes public, they get threatened, and so that's my concern. And I guess I need to understand like the legal ramifications of that, because I don't want. I mean, again, if somebody needs to be disciplined, that's one thing, but I'm concerned about folks getting a hold of that officer or getting a hold of that officer's family and threatening them, etc. And I really that I can't be supportive of, because it's only they need to feel safe and they need to trust us that we want their safety is important to us too.
And how much exposure of a person and their personal identity will this body cam footage reveal? Because my understanding, body cam footage that I've been able to see through social media and other media forms, it doesn't actually expose the individual. It's kind of on your shoulder. It kind of gives a snapshot into what their actions are, but it doesn't reveal their identity. Is that true or false?
I think from a video perspective, that's generally true. Now, certainly there may be someone in the video saying the person's name or some other identifying characteristic. I think what is more likely to reveal identities is when we ask the court to release certain body cam footage, we have to be very specific, and we would probably have to identify whose body cam footage we were releasing. So those court records are often public records as well. So maybe not in the video, but certainly the likelihood exists that name or names would be disclosed in the court paperwork.
But what we're requesting here is for council to have the right to view it and not to release any portion of it publicly. I mean, that would only come about if we discovered something that we felt like needed to be made public, and then that discussion would come about then. I mean, all we're talking about at this point is just the right to view it and see what we see, or see and hear. If there's anything there, or if that validates the APD's point of view, or validates what the protesters are telling us, or even something that we've not yet heard.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think we're taking it one step at a time, and in just this phase of it, I think that I would feel comfortable, because we have retracted so much from employing a third party firm, to actually do some internal stuff and, possibly outsource for community engagement facilitation, for this council to take our rightful responsibility in viewing body cam footage and determining where we go from there. But the determination of where we go from there, I think is up for a future discussion. But as of right now, I keep saying I kind of see this as a 3-part inquiry. And I think that this council should just kind of step up and view that body cam footage and be able to use our authority in being a part of this inquiry.
So I guess I would ask Brad, is there a way to allow, or, to ask a judge, or whoever you ask, I assume it's a judge, to allow council to view this footage without, again, to Shanika's point, without saying we want to review 2,000 hours of footage, but without violating individual officers' personnel rights. And you may not be able to answer this like just today, Brad. You're like lawyering on the spot, but.
Well, I can give it my best try, and I can tell you that state law actually has determined that police recordings are not personnel records. They exist in a totally separate category under a totally separate set of rules. So they are not personnel restricted, as many other personnel information documents and the like are. They are governed very specifically by a separate statute dealing just with police recordings. And they follow a process that is much more dictated by what the court will allow than by the statutory construction for personnel records. So the general rule is that they are not personnel records. So we don't worry about disclosure of that. We only worry about what the court will allow. And if the court deems it appropriate based on a variety of factors that it weighs, we don't concern ourselves further with the determination of disclosure beyond that personnel information.
So the next step here could be that, or should be that let's go to council for a vote. I don't know if Gwen's actually saying she's for it or against it, but with the two of us asking that it go to council, that should get it there, right? Yeah.
Well, look, I'm supportive of it, again, as long as the concerns I have are addressed, that we feel like, we can adequately protect our officers.
Okay.
But given that caveat, I would be supportive of going to council and, making this recommendation.
Okay. So is that all you needed, Brad, as far as that goes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I believe so. If that is the recommendation that will go to the full city council, we'd be prepared to act on that.
And when would that come to council? Or when could it come to
Not tonight.
I was going to suggest that, but we got a really busy schedule tonight.
I think I would have to confer with the city manager as well as our clerk on the coming schedule to try to get that as quickly as possible, but I wouldn't want to speak in advance of reviewing the schedule.
Good, fine. So have we put forth what needs to be said here today, or we need further input, further definition?
And can I just add one thing? I would also ask that the police department, and unfortunately I forgot to find this on the internet right before, but there's a North Carolina committee that I believe Justice Earls is on, et cetera, that has put out, I know they put out 3 recommendations, and they're, again, I don't know how binding they are, but I would ask APD to look at them and consider strongly. The third one isn't really within our purview, but the first one is to eliminate the use of all chokeholds, which our policy, our police policy, it gives you a little wiggle room. And I think what this committee is suggesting is that like there shouldn't be any wiggle room on that. And then the second, and I know that our APD is already working on this, but to basically affirm the obligation for an officer to stop or try to get, if another officer is behaving inappropriately or out of bounds, et cetera, to say that every officer that's witnessing that has an affirmative obligation to stop that behavior. I know that we are in the process of training for that, but I don't know whether it's requiring like a positive affirmation of that. So I would like APD to strongly consider adopting those 2 recommendations and keep an eye on what the other recommendations are. The third recommendation, which I referred to, is that it's asking magistrates to look at a person's ability to pay before determining bail levels. Now, again, that's obviously not our responsibility, but that's the third recommendation of this committee. So I would just ask, and I don't really know whether this is, but it's a little bit, these kind of forward-looking policies that I would ask APD to strongly consider.
Yeah, Gwen, I like that because I think the interim police chief, I cannot remember his name, but he introduced EPIC.
Chief White.
Chief White. Ethical policing is courageous. And he introduced that when he came in. And I was very interested in the model, but also the reporting of that. If you do have to intervene, then I think there should be some reporting there. And I know the Professional Standards Committee should get a notice that this person had to be called in, and and whatever disciplinary measures follow that. I think we should track that behavior with this, with any type of EPIC modeling. So we don't need motions for these recommendations, or are we good?
Councilwoman Smith, I think it may be helpful just to clarify and maintain your record if the group did make a motion. It sounds like you have a consensus, but I believe since you will be officially making a recommendation to City Council, it does help to have a motion in place specifying exactly what you'll be recommending.
Okay.
Tamika, can you make that motion?
Yeah, great. Okay, so with Brad's help, I would make a motion that that the police department continue its internal investigation of the activities during the protest period, and go forward with what other disciplinary actions are necessary. That the process that the legal department has already outlined in making the top level decisions be reported out to council and the public. That the legal department look at or take to City Council a recommendation that council be allowed to review body cam footage subject to protecting officers' identities to the extent lawful. And and that we continue to investigate a way to allow people to bring forward their stories around the on the ground protests and determine like the best way to go forward on that. That would be my motion, really clear cut and smooth.
Second that.
Okay.
I vote for that as well.
Okay.
Okay, so with that, are we ready to move to public comment or everyone? Okay. Get back to my script here. Okay, we will now open it up for public comment. Do we have anyone in the speaker queue?
Chairman Haynes, you have 3 people in the speaker queue. I will begin.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, excellent. Jonathan Robert, City of Asheville. I'm really glad to see that the conversation around body camera footage and its release is moving forward. I know from personal firsthand experience just how hard activists in the community fought to have APD adopt body cameras in the first place. It was truly unfortunate that after this happened, Raleigh stepped in. I believe the chief sponsor of the bill was a 30-year sheriff who had also run the Fraternal Order of Police for the county that he resided in, who put forward a state law that would shield all of this footage from public view. I think, quite frankly, it's unbelievable that we as taxpayers pay for these Axon cameras. We pay APD to store this footage in the cloud, thousands and thousands of dollars a month to hold that footage. And the citizenry isn't allowed to see any of it at all. Y'all know that in California, body camera footage is required to be released within 30 days of a public records request for it. 30 days. They have 30 days to shape their narrative, to explain to you that what you're about to see on camera isn't as horrible and awful as you really think it is. You know, they give you 30 days to gaslight the community, and then they have to drop that footage. Now, there's a saying in activist circles, and it's change doesn't happen because the police and the city bureaucrats saw the footage. Change happens because we see the footage. That's how it's worked. That's how it's worked from cell phone camera footage. That's how it's worked from leaked body camera footage, because y'all cannot say with any certainty that we would have gotten any justice for Johnny Rush, and Christopher Hickman might still be on the streets applying excessive force to people if it weren't for the fact that that footage was leaked. Y'all know that. We know that. So the fact that this committee finally is brave enough to say, hey, full council, we want you to determine whether, first, we should see this, because as governing members of this community elected to duly represent us, you have a right to see that footage. You have a right to govern.
Robert, his 3 minutes was up. Sorry.
It's all good. I appreciate.
Hello.
You are ready to speak.
All right. My name is Max McDonald, and I am an Asheville resident. I'm calling to support Councilman Haynes' original proposal to ban the use of tear gas by the Asheville Police Department. The use of tear gas during the Black Lives Matter protests was a blatant example of excessive force and did nothing but increase distrust for APD among Ashevilleans. Moreover, in regards to the investigation and body cam footage, I would like to remind the committee that legality is not morality. Militarized officers beating and tear gassing unarmed citizens for expressing their First Amendment right is unequivocally wrong, regardless of whether it was legal or not. I find it extremely unsettling that some of you seem to be more concerned with the safety of officers than the safety and peace of mind of civilians. In addition, I would like to reiterate that the best response to the abhorrent use of force against protesters is to defund the Asheville Police Department by at least 50% and reallocate those funds toward affordable housing, education, healthcare, and reparations for the Black community. Asheville could set a precedent for a progressive approach to public safety, and I urge the committee to support banning tear gas and divesting from APD. We will feel safer if we know that we will not be brutalized by those who are supposed to protect us, and if we know that preventative measures are being prioritized over reactive policing. Your constituents are demanding immediate action and financial reallocation. Thank you. That is all.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Grace Martinez. I'm a West Asheville resident. And first of all, I just want to say I really appreciate that the shift that you guys have taken. I think you heard the call about the investigation, but then you listened to the feedback really well from the community about the concerns regarding that. And I just want to say that I really appreciate that from you guys. I think that here we need to get to the core of the problem, which isn't so much about about the legality of this, but the tactics that have been used. And our question here isn't so much whether or not the actions of the Asheville Police Department were legal or within their scope of authority, but it lies within what kind of authority we give these officers to use on peaceful protesters. It's my opinion that the tactics that they used were escalating the situation and endangering the people en masse. It doesn't seem logical to me to gas an entire crowd, use flashbangs, shoot at us with non-lethal weapons if the goal is to actually identify those who may have been creating an unsafe situation. It concerns me, Ms. Whistler's comments about concern for officer safety, but not having concerns for the safety of protesters, which they have also been threatened by, white nationalists in our community. And I don't think that it's, okay to hide the identity of officers who are here to serve the public and paid with our tax dollars to anonymously abuse members of our community. We have to change the policies to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And we have to expect that there's going to be ongoing civil unrest at this point in time. And I don't know at this point what's stopping APD from using these same tactics again. We need to ban these weapons immediately, as other cities have done, because you guys have to expect that we're going to see this again. And if today people hit the streets and those police officers are in that same position, I'm just worried that you guys are going to be back here talking about another investigation based on, what they have done. So we need to change our policy right now. I talked to Brian directly about this, but I'm also curious if we have any information about the police and what they can do in terms of investigating protesters and surveilling us, as we've seen in the past. And I would like to know what plans are in place if federal agents attempt to take over our city, as they have in other places in the country right now, which is unconstitutional behavior. So I think that we need to be really proactive as we move forward and just anticipate this on an ongoing basis and make changes to our policies immediately. Again, I really appreciate the flexibility in your decision making as you work to respond to these community needs. And I really hope that we can put a better system in place as soon as possible in anticipation of ongoing civil action from Asheville community members. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next caller will be up in just a second. Caller, you're able to speak. They hung up, sorry.
Hi, everybody. This is Julie Mayfield, your colleague. I've been watching the meeting and appreciate the motion that Gwen just made. I think all of those elements are good. My question is, I came in a little late, so I might have missed this, but to the point that the previous speaker made of, regardless of whether the tactics that were used by our police officers were legal or in accordance with policy, I think we know enough to know that we don't like them and we would want them to be different next time. So what part of Gwen's motion, or is there some other element that you're going to be recommending to full council that's going to get at the question of how do we do this differently the next time? What is that thing that we're going to do that's going to enable us to get there? Thanks.
Brad, in my motion, did I include that we're going to bring, I didn't?
I think we might have left that out.
Oh, well, that was bad.
You did hint at it, I think, Gwen. You made sure that part of this was providing a platform to allow the public to continue to come forward with their stories in order to, I think, inform what changes in the future would occur.
Okay, well, can I make a friendly amendment to my motion to include bringing in experts, whether they're local or national, or we reach out to other communities for better future policing and crowd control. I'm sorry, and I appreciate Julie bringing that up. We had talked about that at some depth, and then I forgot to include it in my motion. Sorry.
Well, that was a major part of my recommendations, and I didn't get it on there either, so it's more my fault than yours.
So I would make that additional motion, Brian.
And second, and okay, did we get that properly added?
I believe you've got it all now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we have any more public comment?
Yes, sir. We have 2 more.
Okay.
Hello there. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Go ahead, caller.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm glad that you all are interested in reviewing that camera footage yourself. I would additionally like to speak in support of that initial tear gas ban. I think the reaction was demonstrably an overreaction and an abuse of public trust. However, in terms of the footage that you all are seeking, I would love for you all to plan towards having access to that footage without having to go through all of this in the future. It seems like this is a narrowly focused ask, which again is appreciated. But as our elected representatives, you all should have access to that footage immediately with no need to go to a court, no need to go to make additional requests. Now, I'm not sure what the structure of the state law referred to previously is, but I would urge you all to look into working towards a solution to have instant access at your leisure to any police footage there. So I think that would be an important step forward. Additionally, I would like to thank you all for what you are working on here and trying to attempt to ensure that there is some diligence done on your end. And I'm glad that you are considering this conversation outside of what is strictly legal and within the realms of their rules, and moving it more towards a conversation of what we feel is important to do in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Patrick Conan. I just wanted to make a public comment to support what some other people have already said. I appreciate that this committee is working with the city attorney to see the release of the body cam footage, but I do think the council should request that footage be released to the public There's already footage of these events that's available on social media and online. I think the public release of that footage would just allow everyone in our community to see what really happened. I think that's a really important step. And I would also ask that this committee move forward with a motion to do a ban on tear gas. I'm disappointed that that hasn't come up in front of full council to this point. And I think we need more accountability from our council to actually vote on these items. I appreciate the need for research, for looking for best practices from other cities, but really there's certain things that we as a community know are wrong, and we think that our council can take action today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Haynes, that is the end of your live public comment.
Well, if we have no more public comment, the meeting is adjourned. See everyone later today.